My name is Evan. I'm 28 and I've lived in this small Missouri town pretty much my whole life. I work at a local appliance repair shop. Nothing fancy, but I'm good with my hands, and people here know they can call me when the washing machine stops spinning or the heater quits in the middle of winter. I rent a small one-story house on a quiet street, nothing too special. The kind of neighborhood where people still wave when they see you across the street. Well, two doors down lives Rachel. She's 31, a nurse at the local clinic, divorced, no kids. We've known each other for about 2 years now. It started out just saying hey over the fence or when taking out the trash, eventually turning into casual talks, then longer ones. It always felt easy, even when we barely said anything. Last Saturday, she called. Her water heater had gone out. She said she'd already tried YouTube and a wrench, but gave up before flooding her laundry room. I told her I'd swing by after my morning shift. It wasn't a big deal, just a busted pilot light. Took me maybe 20 minutes to get it running again. She offered me coffee. We sat on her small back porch, the kind with a crooked step and wind chimes that never shut up. It was afternoon warm quiet. We were both off that day. We talked about everything and nothing, her shifts at the clinic, a patient who tried to flirt with her even with a broken leg, her dog waking her up at 300 a.m. because it thought the fridge made a weird noise. I laughed. She laughed. It was the same flow we always had. Then I looked at her. I don't know why I said it. I smiled and joked, "You should get married." It was light, like one of those dumb, throwaway things you say when the silence feels too deep. But she didn't laugh. She looked down for a second, then back at me, and she said quietly but dead serious, "I would if you just ask." I froze. I swear my stomach dropped. My hand was still around the coffee cup, and I didn't know what to do with it. She didn't say anything else, just looked at me for another second, then stood up. "I need to fold laundry," she said, almost like nothing happened, and she went inside. I sat there for maybe 2 minutes after she left. The wind blew the chimes again. They sounded too loud now. I finished the coffee, even though it had gone cold, then set the mug on the table, nodded to myself like an idiot, and left. I didn't see her for 3 days after that, not even in the yard, and I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. Not the words, even just the way she looked when she said it. It didn't feel like a comeback. It felt like she'd been waiting for me to say something for a long time. I didn't sleep well those few nights. It wasn't like I was lying in bed obsessing. It was more like something in the background of my brain wouldn't shut off. That line, "I would if you just ask," it kept surfacing in weird places while brushing my teeth, while tying my boots, while fixing a damn microwave at work. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to pretend it didn't happen, to just let it slide back into the silence like one of our other passing jokes, but this didn't feel like a joke. Not when she said it, not when she looked at me like that. I didn't text her. I didn't walk by her place, didn't even check if her porch light was on like I usually do out of habit. It wasn't fear. It was something closer to being exposed, like I'd stood in front of someone thinking I was invisible and suddenly realized they'd been seeing me the whole time. By Tuesday, I was going stir crazy, so I buried myself in work, repaired a refrigerator for an older couple across town, fixed a broken thermostat, took a call from a guy who thought his toaster was possessed. I didn't care. I said yes to everything just to keep moving. Then Thursday afternoon, I was standing at the counter in the shop wiping grease off my hands when the bell above the door rang. It was her Rachel. She wore Scrubs blue ones with her hair tied back. She looked tired, but in that way, nurses always look like they've seen more than they'll ever say, but still manage to smile anyway. She gave me a little wave. "Hey," she said. I nodded back. "Hey." I didn't move from behind the counter. She didn't come any closer either. "I need a power strip," she said. "The one in my kitchen died." Took the toaster and coffee maker with it. I grabbed one off the wall behind me. $10, I said. She handed me a 20. I started digging for change, but she shook her head. "Keep it." There was a pause, that same kind of weird quiet that doesn't happen unless something's changed. Something unspoken but loud enough to take up the room. "I wasn't trying to mess with you," she said suddenly. I looked up. She shrugged. "What I said on the porch, I wasn't joking, but I wasn't expecting anything either. I just said it." I didn't answer right away, mostly because I didn't trust what would come out of my mouth. "Okay," I said finally. She looked at me like she was waiting for more. When I didn't say it, she gave a small nod, not angry or hurt, just done, like she had gotten what she needed, and that was enough. She turned to go, but right before she reached the door, she looked back and said, "You're allowed to want something, Evan, even if it scares you." Then she left, and I stood there behind the counter, holding the $10 bill she didn't want back, feeling like I just missed something important. That night, I sat out on my porch, just sat there in silence, drinking a beer and listening to nothing. No music, no TV, just my thoughts spinning in circles. She wasn't asking me to do anything dramatic. She wasn't throwing herself at me. She wasn't even saying she wanted me to say it right now. She was just being honest and maybe hoping I'd meet her halfway, but I didn't. And the silence felt louder because of it. The next morning, I walked by her house on the way to my truck. Her curtains were drawn. Her car wasn't there, probably already at the clinic. I almost left a note on her porch, just something dumb like "thanks for the coffee" or "nice seeing you," anything to open a door. But I didn't. Instead, I drove to work, parked the truck, and sat there for 10 minutes staring at the wheel. I felt like I was waiting on myself to become someone I wasn't sure I could be. Friday came with overcast skies and that kind of cold. You don't really expect in late spring, the kind that slips through the sleeves of your jacket and reminds you that the weather around here doesn't care what month it is. I was off work that day. My boss had texted the night before saying the next job got rescheduled. Usually that kind of message would make me smile, maybe grab breakfast somewhere and waste the morning watching car videos on my phone, but not this time. This time I knew exactly where I needed to go. It was just after 9:30 when I walked down the street. I wasn't carrying flowers, wasn't wearing anything special, just jeans, a gray hoodie, and a pair of boots that had seen better days. My hands were in my pockets the whole way there. When I got to her front porch, I hesitated for a full minute, maybe two. I stood there looking at her door like it might open on its own if I waited long enough. It didn't, so I knocked. Rachel opened the door maybe 10 seconds later. She was in sweats, hair pulled up in a loose bun, no makeup. She looked like someone who didn't expect company, but she didn't seem surprised either. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Not really," I said. She opened the door wider and stepped aside. I walked in. The house smelled like coffee and laundry. Something about it felt calm, familiar. We didn't sit right away. I stood near the kitchen counter and she leaned against the opposite side. I took a breath. I thought maybe I was just the neighbor, the guy who fixes things, someone you laugh with on your porch. She crossed her arms but didn't speak. "I've been going over the last 2 years in my head," I continued, "and I keep thinking about the times you brought me soup when I was sick, or when you offered to walk my dog after my leg was in that brace, the stupid jokes, the late-night texts. I keep thinking maybe I missed something." She gave a soft smile. "You didn't miss it. You just didn't believe it." That hit harder than I expected. "I don't have a ring," I said. She tilted her head. "Evan, I'm not asking for a proposal." "I know," I said. "I'm just saying I've never really done this not seriously." She pushed off the counter and stepped closer. "Me neither. At least not right." We stood there in the middle of her kitchen. She was close enough that I could smell the faint scent of shampoo in her hair. She looked up at me, not with expectation, just with patience. I took another breath. "I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel something," I said. "Then don't. I'm not great with big gestures." "That's okay," she said. "I don't need fireworks, just honesty." I nodded. "You got that. I'm here because I don't want to spend another day acting like this doesn't matter to me." Silence. Then she asked, "So what now?" And I said, "Whatever you're comfortable with." She smiled again, softer this time, and turned to pour 2 mugs of coffee. We sat on the couch with mismatched socks and warm cups between our hands. It wasn't romantic in a movie sense, no background music, no candlelight, just two people finally being honest with each other. We talked about work, about how she got into nursing, about the first time she noticed me fixing my truck, shirtless in the driveway. We laughed about that. She said she pretended to need help with her hose that week just to talk to me. I said I'd never had someone make a water hose sound so flirty. Time passed fast. Around noon, she asked if I was hungry. I said always. We made grilled cheese together like a couple of 12-year-olds. I burned one side of mine. She made fun of me. I told her it was extra crispy and part of the experience. After lunch, I stayed a little longer. Nothing big happened, no kiss, no dramatic moment, just comfort, familiarity. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Before I stepped out, she looked at me and said, "Thanks for not waiting another 2 years." I smiled. "Thanks for not slamming the door in my face." She leaned against the door frame and said, "You still owe me a better joke, though." "I'll work on it." I walked back home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. No pressure, no labels, just something real finally beginning. The next few days felt easier, not perfect, just easier. I wasn't suddenly walking around with a goofy grin or floating on air. Life still looked the same. The weather was still moody, and work still meant fixing people's appliances that shouldn't have lasted this long in the first place. But inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't wondering anymore. Rachel and I started texting more casually, at first random things, memes, complaints about weather and laundry, then more real, short, steady exchanges that didn't feel forced. Tuesday night, she invited me over for dinner. Nothing fancy, she made spaghetti. We ate on her couch plates on our laps reruns of Seinfeld in the background. I teased her for putting too much garlic in the bread. She called my portion a mountain of noodles for a man with no metabolism. It was easy, comfortable. At one point, her leg brushed mine and neither of us moved. She didn't lean in. I didn't either. But that touch, it was something like an understanding without words. Wednesday was busy at work, so we didn't talk much. Thursday, I texted her around noon asking if she wanted to grab coffee after her shift. She said she'd get back to me, but she didn't. No text, no call, nothing. I waited until almost 900 p.m., then left it alone. I figured maybe she had a long shift or just forgot. But Friday, I was driving home from work around 4 when I saw a car in her driveway. I didn't recognize a black SUV, clean, new, not the kind of car someone in our town usually drove. I parked at my place, sat behind the wheel a second longer than usual. Then I saw them, Rachel and a man I'd never seen before, so I'd be stepping out her front door. He was tall, good-looking, clean-cut. She was holding a folder. He said something to her. She nodded. Then he gave her a quick hug, not the kind you give a stranger, the kind that says, "I know you." I didn't realize how long I'd been watching until I felt my fingers tighten around the steering wheel. She didn't look over, just waved goodbye and went back inside. I got out of the truck, went inside my house, didn't even take off my boots, sat on the edge of the couch just staring at the blank TV screen. I knew it wasn't my place to feel anything. Not really. We hadn't labeled anything. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't made promises. But I felt it anyway, that stupid sinking weight in your gut that tells you maybe you read the situation wrong. I didn't text her that night or the next morning. I avoided going outside in case I'd run into her. By Saturday afternoon, I was just tired of myself. Around 5, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it without checking. It was Rachel, still in scrubs, still holding that folder. She looked at me like she could already tell something was off. "Hey." I stepped back to let her in. She didn't move. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah." She stepped in, stood near the window, still holding the folder. She didn't sit. "You didn't text back," she said. "You didn't either," I replied. She paused. "I had a crazy day. One of the nurses called out and I ended up staying over. Then my ex dropped by." So that was him. "He's trying to refinance the house we bought back when we were married," she continued. "He needed my signature on some old paperwork. That's what the folder's about." I said nothing, just nodded. She stepped closer. "Evan, nothing's going on between me and him. We've been done for 3 years. There's no part of me that wants to revisit that." "I know," I said quietly. "No, I don't think you do," she replied, "because you haven't looked at me since I walked in." That stung because it was true. I just didn't know what to think, I admitted. I saw the car, I saw the hug. I didn't want to assume anything, but you assumed anyway. I looked at her then. "Yeah, I did." She softened a little. "I get it. Really, I do. But I need to be able to talk to you without having to prove myself every time something uncomfortable happens." I nodded again. "You're right." We stood there in that awkward, Heavy silence. Then I said, "Look, I've never been good at this stuff. I mess up before I even get a chance to try, but I don't want to pull away from you." Rachel finally set the folder down on my counter. "Then don't." Another pause. Then I asked, "Are we okay?" She looked me dead in the eye. "We are if you stop hiding every time something feels unfamiliar." "I'll try." "Good," she said, "because I don't want us to start something I have to fix by myself." I nodded slowly. She walked over, gave me a one-armed hug, short but warm, and said, "Next time, just ask. It's easier than guessing." Then she left. I stood there for a while looking at the folder she left on the counter. Her past, some paperwork, nothing more. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to compete with anything. I just had to show up. Sunday morning started slow. The air was thick with that early summer humidity that made your shirt cling before you'd even done anything. I got up around 8, made a pot of coffee, and sat by the window with the blinds halfway open. I hadn't heard from Rachel since she left my place the day before, but this time it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like space, like she left the door open, and it was up to me to walk through it or not. Around 10 yarn, I found myself in the garage rummaging through a box of old stuff, tools, cords, parts from long-forgotten jobs. Buried near the bottom was a small metal tin I hadn't touched in years. Inside were leftover screws, a broken watch, and a cheap silver ring I'd bought from a pawn shop once when I was 21 and thought I was in love. I didn't plan to use it. I just held it for a second and thought about what it had meant, then what it didn't. Then I put it back. Instead, I grabbed something else, a small box of tiny brass hooks, the kind you'd use to fix cabinet doors or hang up a wind chime. I slipped them into my pocket, grabbed 2 cups of coffee to go from the diner down the street, and walked toward Rachel's. She was on her porch, her hair up again, no makeup, feet bare. She was reading something on her phone, but looked up the second she heard me on the steps. "Hey," she said. "Hey." I handed her a coffee. "Hazelnut, 1 sugar." She smiled. "You remembered." I sat down beside her, careful not to spill mine. We didn't talk at first, just sipped quietly while the street carried on like it always did, dogs barking. 2 blocks over, someone mowing a lawn in the distance, a kid on a bike flying past with no helmet. Then I cleared in my throat. "I keep thinking about what you said about not wanting to fix something by yourself." She nodded, didn't interrupt. "I also keep thinking how easy it is to let time pass and convince yourself things don't matter, that people don't matter. But they do. You do." She looked over at me, calm, present. "I'm not the guy with a plan," I went on. "I don't know how to make big speeches, but I know what I feel and I know what I don't want to lose." She said nothing, just listened. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small box of brass hooks, held them in my palm, and offered them to her like they were something valuable. She looked at me, puzzled. "Hooks for your cabinet," I said. "The one under your sink. Keep swinging open." A laugh slipped from her lips, soft, honest. "You're ridiculous," I shrugged. "Maybe, but I'm here. I'm trying." She took the box from my hand and held it. "You're not just trying, Evan. You're showing up. That's more than most." I looked down at my coffee, then up at her. "I'm not joking this time," I said. She nodded. "I know." Another silence, this one full but not heavy. It felt like standing in the middle of something real. She leaned in a little. "So what are we doing?" I took a breath. "We're doing this if you'd want to, I do," she said, as simple as that. It wasn't a proposal. There was no ring, no moment that belonged on a greeting card, just 2 people finally standing in the same place at the same time, saying it out loud. She reached for my hand and laced her fingers through mine. "You're not getting out of helping me with that cabinet now," she said. I smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. A breeze blew through, rustling the trees just enough to break the quiet. We sat there another 10 minutes, maybe more, talking about dinner plans, groceries, if it was too late in the season to start a garden. It was simple. It was everything. And that's how it ended, not with a joke, not with a grand gesture, but with something honest, steady, and finally shared. The story of Evan and Rachel offers a deeply moving lesson. Honesty, even when it scares us, is the key to building something real. Evan, a small-town repairman, and Rachel, a nurse carrying the scars of a past marriage, shared a quiet connection that grew over years of simple, neighborly moments. When Evan's offhand joke about marriage met Rachel's raw, unguarded response, "I would if you just ask it," exposed a truth they'd both been circling. Evan's hesitation, rooted in fear of vulnerability, nearly cost him a chance at love. Yet Rachel's courage to speak her heart and her patience as Evan wrestled with his doubts reminds us that real relationships don't demand perfection, they require showing up flaws and all. Evan's journey to confront his insecurities, to choose action over avoidance, teaches us that the moments we fear most are often the ones that define us. His small gesture of brass hooks wasn't grand, but it was honest, a symbol of his commitment to try. Their story shows that love isn't about fireworks. It's it's about the steady choice to be present, to trust, and to meet someone halfway. So don't let fear silence your truth. Speak it, act on it, and build something worth keeping. What's a moment when you faced your fears to embrace something real? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If this touched you, please subscribe and join our community for more stories that inspire courage and connection. Let's keep these heartfelt conversations alive.